Okay, it's time for a bit of the very first session we did way back at the end of October, beginning of November, and last night class, the Thursday night class, I saw at least one thing I want to go over. Um, and this is pretty basic for using WAMP server in order to develop your web pages, to develop your PHP scripts. You have to launch WAMP first before anything else that you try to run will actually run. So let's launch it. Your PC may ask you, do you want to do this? You say yes. And there we go. So WAMP is now running. Now we can actually start to do things with web pages. So let's do that. I've got NetBeans up and running already. And the first thing that I really want to do is to go over a basic web page and what these tags, which is what they are called, is all about. And since we're doing PHP, this is why I'm going to go over a basic web page, because PHP is basically used to create web pages. So, if we look at our web page that I've created from the basic NetBeans template, the very first thing at the top you see in the opening and closing brackets, this case they're called the less than and greater than, is exclamation mark doc type HTML. What this first tag does is tell the web browser what the document is and what version of that document it is. In this case, we are telling the browser that we are using HTML version 5. There are other versions and there are longer additions to the tag to talk about previous versions of HTML. So let's go down to the next tag that we see. We see HTML again in the less than and the greater than tag, and when I highlight it we see this down here with the // which indicates the closing tag, and everything in here is a part of the HTML document. Again, this is telling the browser that this is HTML and that this is the very bottom of the document, the tree, if you wish, or the branches, the vine, however you want to talk about it, of the HTML document. Everything within here is an HTML document. We have the head tag and the closing head tag. Everything within here says something to the web browser primarily and is rarely ever displayed. This is mostly just for the purposes of things like scripts, or once upon a time we used to load up tags to try and get higher rankings on the search engines. However, now if you fill these up with search words, generally the more you put, the more likely you are to be penalized and your web page will drop in rankings. This title tag will be displayed in the tabs at the top of your web browser. These meta tags say something to the web browser which are not necessarily displayed, but could be depending on what you're putting in there. Meta tags are not displayed, but they are containing information here. In this case, you see meta name equals description, and the content equals a basic web page. So that is telling us that this is a basic web page. Meta name author tells who wrote the web page. A student in this case. I could have put my own name in there. You can put yours. And then the head tag here, the closing head tag, just ends the head portion of the document. Other things go up in here like scripts. You can put CSS up in here, or you can call in a CSS script. You'll see that later. And then the body tag is the actual guts of the web page. This is what will be displayed to the world. Nothing outside of this should be displayed, but if there's something funky with the code or your tags, there's a very good possibility that it will be. And if you do see something that shouldn't be displayed, you need to take a look at your tags and see if you've done something like this, which is very common. I've done it in the past myself, others have as well. Div is just a way of separating blocks of data, and div is much more versatile than that, and we'll see that when we get into CSS. And then there's what we want to display. So let's take a quick look at it and see what this does. We have our hello world, complete with my typo with a capital O, and the hello world that I was telling you about in the tab at the top. I'm not going to worry about that. This is just for demo purposes. So this is the basic web page, and this is primarily what we will be generating with PHP a little later on. So let's take a look at the first PHP page. And I was talking in class about comments. Comments, you put them in there because you primarily want to say, what does this code do? And you also use it to document for your own purposes what you've done. I have many a time not bothered to put comments in, and I'll come back a day later, a week later, a year later, and wonder what I was doing, and so I have to go through the code and try and figure it out, because sometimes it's not so easy. Anyway, this is called a block comment. It is also sometimes called a prologue comment, and you can fill this up and just keep expanding it. It's not always necessarily a good idea unless you're documenting your script with commands and so on, and you want to be able to know what's in there. This is also a block comment. It's just I've done this block comment this way, one common way. This is probably a bit more common, and this is a line comment. This can go, basically it goes at the end of a line of code if you want to comment a line of code, or it can just go in between lines of code to document what's above or what's underneath. When I get tired, I put funny comments in there. You could see that if you were to look at my code. So let's see some PHP commands now. Remember variables. Variables are basically a little box where you store some data that you're going to do something with later on. That's my best way of describing it. In this case, what we've done is we've got a named box called greeting, the named variable called greeting, which contains the value hello world. It's in between quotes, so it's text or character or string if you wish, and sometimes some people will refer to this as $ greeting or string greeting, your choice. Echo, on the other hand, is going to echo out or echo back to the screen your variable greeting, which contains hello world. So let's take a quick look at that. And there it is. Basic. Now remember these tags here also, if you're doing a PHP script, you need this at the beginning of your script at the very least. And down here you'll see the little light bulb that says unnecessary closing delimiter. I always put it in anyway, just in case I'm going to mix HTML and PHP, and you'll see me do that later. And it's for that reason that I put this in here, because if I don't, you could have an error. Now here I have a number of variables. I have greeting1, which contains the single word hello, greeting2, which contains the single word world, and I have a variable called punctuation, which contains the exclamation mark. Then I have a master, I'll call it master, variable called greeting, which contains the contents of greeting1, which is hello. And then you'll see this period in here. This is called concatenation, sometimes called catting for short. And so what we're doing is connecting these all together into one variable. So greeting contains greeting1, and you could say additionally it contains the space character. Additionally it contains the contents of greeting2, which is world. Additionally it contains another space. Additionally it contains the contents of punctuation. And then down here we echo out greeting, which says hello world with an exclamation mark. So let's run it. And there it is. Now you don't have to create that fourth variable. It's just a little simpler sometimes to not have to use another variable. So here's our greeting 1, hello, greeting 2, which is world, and our punctuation, which is the exclamation mark. And now we've simply put them all onto one line, the echo line, greeting 1. In addition, we're going to echo greeting 1. In addition, we're going to echo a space. In addition, we're going to echo greeting 2, another space, and then punctuation. And there it is. Very simple. Let's move on to the next. And now we're going to go into function. Now the echo was not a function, it was a basic command. This is actually a function. And you can feed other data into it to make it do things. In this case, printf, our function, stands for print formatted. And here's our three greetings. Greeting 1, hello, greeting 2, world, and punctuation, which we've taken, like we did earlier, and combined them into one variable, which we are going to print out. But in this case, you'll notice that I've got, between my quotes here, I've got %s, a string, and a new line. Now this new line will not show up on our web page. It will only show up basically if we were to view the source code. And then greeting. So what is happening here? Well, the percent is going to substitute our greeting for the S. So let's take a look at it. And there it is. And if I look at the source code, you see hello world with nothing else, but we're not actually producing a web page yet, per se. Now I've gone back to a single variable, greeting, which contains hello world, and we're going to substitute the greeting hello world for the S. So S will be removed and greeting will be put into its place. There it is. Now let's do a little basic math. So now you'll notice that it says $number 1 equals 10, $number 2 equals 25. Normally in other coding languages such as C, I would have to say at this point integer, whatever I would call it, say integer 1 equals 10, integer 2 equals 25. But PHP handles that assignment by itself. Previously, our hello world, as you see it here, would normally be assigned char, but again, PHP knows that this is a string because it's between quotes. So we have 10 and we have 25, and in the print format, result equals %d / new line. Now here I've got $number 1 plus $number 2. So what we're going to do in this line here, we've added number 2 to number 1, and we're going to substitute the D with the result. So let's take a look at it. And the result is 35, which is accurate. But if I make this into something other than a whole number, let's say 25.5, 25.5, and run it, it still shows up as 35. Why is that? Well, if we look here, the D is expecting basically to spit out a whole number. 10, a 25, a 35, or whatever. So in order to display the decimal portion, it should be 35.5 after all, we have to change this from D to F, which stands for floating point. And if we run that, we now see that we have 35.5 and several zeros. But we don't want to have to so many decimal places. it's a little annoying. We want to say have maybe 2 decimal places or even 1 decimal place if we want to have that that short a number. So let's switch it to 2 decimal places. So we're going to make a slight change here. In this case, we're going to go %1, a backslash, a $sign, a decimal point, 2, and now our floating point. So let's take a look and see what it looks like. There we have 35.50, which is a little bit easier to read than all of the other zeros that were after it. If we were to change that 2 into a 1, into a 1, we now see 35.5. This is not precision enough for some numbers, but it's good enough for basic. But I'm going to change that back to 2. And now I'm going to change this to multiplication. So now we are multiplying number 2 by number 1. So we're going 10 times 25.5, which yields 255.00. Let's divide it. So our / like that is the divisor, dividing sign. So we are taking number 1 and dividing it by number 2. In other words, we're dividing 10 by 25.5, which should not be an even number or a whole number. It is 0.39. So there you have some basic math. And now I am going to draw this particular video to a close because I'm starting to draw a little long.